Episodes 7, 8, and 9 are the best trilogy in Star Wars. Welcome back, everyone, to part 2 of my Star Wars tier list. If you haven't already, check out part 1. I'll link it above. But today we're going to rank the Star Wars TV shows up against the movies, and that'll leave us with my final Star Wars tier list. So hit the subscribe button before we jump in, but let's go ahead and rank the Star Wars TV shows. Alright, the Star Wars TV shows, some of them are hits, some of them are misses. I tend to enjoy just about all Star Wars content, but let's go ahead and start with the TV show that started it all, Star Wars The Clone Wars. Star Wars The Clone Wars was my Star Wars. I grew up with the Clone Wars. I had the Lego sets, I had all of the action figures, I had the turbo tank and the AT-TE. I had it all. Clone Wars is so special, and what Clone Wars did for the prequels cannot be understated. Even though I don't subscribe to the prequel hate, a lot of people didn't like the prequels, and what Clone Wars did to rehabilitate that and expand on those characters and just provide context to that time period is insane. It truly is insane. The vision Lucas had for the Clone Wars and what Dave Filoni did with it is just so special. The Clone Wars, for me, falls at the very top of A tier. I'd almost argue that it's an S tier project, but obviously there's some arcs and some episodes that just are kind of boring, but that makes sense. It was a TV show for kids. Not everything can be a banger, but what Season 7 and what Dave Filoni did with Season 7, that final arc, it brings me to tears every time. So special. Next up is Star Wars Rebels, which at its inception had a lot of people upset because the Clone Wars got canceled when Disney bought Star Wars, and they said, we're going to do our own animated TV show, and they created Rebels. And Season 1 definitely is not, I think, as great as the rest of the show, but it really picks up its pace, and by the time you get to the end of Season 4, you just love these characters, and you love the story that's told, and I think that time period, again, is so cool to see in between episodes 3 and 4. Star Wars Rebels is fantastic. So where am I going to put Star Wars Rebels? In A tier. However, for the projects that are in A tier currently, I'm going to put it at the end, behind the Clone Wars, Rogue One, and A New Hope. I'd still watch all of those projects before I'd watch Rebels, but Rebels is something really special. Next up is the next animated show Disney did, Star Wars Resistance, and I labored through watching this show. I had to get it done, the 2 seasons. I needed to watch it. I'm a Star Wars fan. I got to watch everything. Man, and this show just, I got to say, the animation style is what really throws me off. The story actually isn't all that bad. It's a 2-season story of a racing pilot, and it's kind of fun. It takes place during the sequel trilogy. It's okay. Like for young kids just having a fun story to watch, sure. Doesn't really do much to expand the Star Wars universe like the other shows do. No. I'm going to put it in D tier. Now for The Mandalorian. Where does The Mandalorian sit on my Star Wars tier list? Mandalorian is so cool. Season 1, the Western style bounty hunter story and introducing us to Grogu. Season 1's great. Season 2, though, so special. I vividly remember watching the finale with my dad and seeing Luke Skywalker take down all the Dark Troopers and just save the day. That was just, wow. Season 3, I think, gets a little too much hate. I think it's okay. It tells a fun story, but it definitely doesn't tell as great of a story as Seasons 1 and 2. But The Mandalorian is, I think, what should be the blueprint for how Star Wars needs to approach TV shows, and that's what they tried to do with the rest of the live-action shows, and most of them did not live up to the same hype that Mandalorian did. But The Mandalorian is fantastic. Din Djarin, one of the best Star Wars characters. Grogu, amazing. And all of the characters that are part of the Mandalorian story as well have been really great to watch. For me, The Mandalorian falls in the A tier, but behind Star Wars Rebels. Now for the Book of Boba Fett. Wildly overhated. The one scene I absolutely hate in the show is the speeder bike chase. I think that is terrible. I don't know what they were doing and why it looks like those speeder bikes are so slow. But I think this show is just so wildly overhated. I love the story of Boba Fett with the Tuskens and him, kind of coming back to life. I would like to see a little more grit from Boba. I think the story of him being a fair ruler rather than just a brutal ruler is an interesting one. However, I just don't think you can take away from who Boba Fett is and how brutal he can be. He was a bounty hunter. I still think he needs to show signs of that while also trying to be a fair ruler. And the 2 episodes with The Mandalorian, specifically the Luke Skywalker sequences, I mean, that really helps the show out a lot. I think the biggest mistake of the show was having Grogu come back to Mando. I definitely think that he should have stayed with Luke, but it was the decision that was made. And I guess it makes sense. Yeah, Mando and Grogu gotta be together, right? Anyways, Book of Boba Fett is an overhated story. It's fun. It's not fantastic. It's not bad. For that reason, for me, it sits in the B tier, but at the end of the B tier, so even behind The Force Awakens. Next up is the Kenobi show, and the conversation of what is and what could have been with this is just so unfortunate. Obviously, we know that there were almost scripts for an entire trilogy of movies rather than just a TV show. It's unfortunate what happened and how much got cut from the Kenobi story here. 6 episodes certainly is not enough for a TV show, let alone a TV show with Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen starring as Kenobi and Darth Vader. This show has signs of life followed by just terrible sequences. The Reva story just isn't great. It feels off. Young Leia is fine, and I actually really enjoy the fact that having Leia be the reason Kenobi gets back into the fight almost lines up with episode 4 really well. Like, why does Leia say, "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're our only hope"? Well, that's because Leia has a relationship with Obi-Wan Kenobi. So I really do like that piece of it. And the final duel between Vader and Kenobi in this show is, wow, really good. But at the end of the day, it's only 6 episodes. It has some really dull moments, and this TV show should have been like a 2-3 season TV show and have a really expansive and built out plot. They could have told so many stories with the surviving Jedi, with Kenobi, with Vader, the chase between the two. It's not enough, and the little that they were able to get done with the show, it's not great. So for me, Kenobi sits in the C tier. That final duel alone puts it at the top of the C tier for me. All right, the first of our 3 Tales shows, Tales of the Jedi. This was an awesome entry and something I love that Star Wars is doing with their animation. Tales of the Jedi is really cool. I definitely think they should do a lot more of these like really short seasons of different stories from around the Star Wars universe, and I really don't think they should limit it to really small portions of the Star Wars universe that already exist. I'd love to see more stories from before episode 1, from the sequel era, from in between episodes 6 and 7. Like, they could do so much with the Tales series in telling stories of characters who are just side characters or are maybe main characters but don't have their plot as built out in the movies as we would like to see them. So like Count Dooku, for example, obviously he's a main character, but what the 3 10-minute episodes in Tales of the Jedi do for his character, incredible. And I'd love to see them make more of this than just the 3 that they have currently. Tales of the Jedi for me though is definitely one of the best, and I'm going to put it in the B tier, ahead of Boba Fett and The Force Awakens, but behind episodes 6 and 1. Okay, the Ahsoka Season 1. This is definitely controversial. There are people very opinionated about Ahsoka and what they like and what they don't like. And I unapologetically, absolutely adore the Ahsoka series. Absolutely adore it. It is an A tier show for me. It is going to be at the bottom of the A tier though. Mandalorian, Rebels, Clone Wars, all better. But Ahsoka, amazing. I absolutely love it. I cannot wait for season 2. I'm not going to expand on my opinion any more than that. Unapologetically, love Ahsoka. Next up is The Bad Batch, and honestly, I can't believe we got 3 full seasons of The Bad Batch. I can't wait until we get our next full-line animated series. Obviously, we're getting Maul Shadow Lord next year. I wonder if we're going to get more than just 1 season of that. But The Bad Batch definitely has some really high moments. It has some arcs that are lower. I'd argue that when you compare The Bad Batch to, say, Clone Wars or Rebels, the highs of The Bad Batch are at an equal or higher level than the highs of the Clone Wars and Rebels, but the lows of The Bad Batch are far, far lower than the Clone Wars and Rebels. So I feel like it's just a little more inconsistent than some of the other shows on this list. However, I love The Bad Batch, and I love the actual Bad Batch characters. For me, it sits in the B tier, but behind Episode 6. Our second Tales show, Tales of the Empire, gives us a story about Barriss and a story about Morgan Elsbeth. This one definitely falls flat, I think. When I first tried to watch it, I fell asleep. So, and I usually don't fall asleep during Star Wars stuff. So, yes, it's just not, I don't know. There's so many stories they could have told with Tales of the Empire, and I just think the 2 that they told just probably weren't the most interesting 2 that they could have told. So I don't know. It's whatever. It's fine for what it is. I'd like to see more Tales of the Empire stories, but I doubt we're going to get any more. For me, D tier, but above Rise of Skywalker and Star Wars Resistance. Now for The Acolyte. This is probably the moment you've all been waiting for in part 2 of this Star Wars tier list. Where do I place The Acolyte? And if any of the other rankings give you an indication, I think it should come as no surprise that The Acolyte for me is an F tier show. The Acolyte does nothing to improve the Star Wars universe. Now, The Acolyte unfairly got an insane amount of hate before the show had even come out. I completely disagree with that point of view. The Acolyte was exciting leading up to its release. The Acolyte promised a story about the Sith and their slow rise to power. And the show came out, and it was not that. It wasn't at all that. Additionally, another point that the haters use all the time is that it's canon breaking. It's canon breaking. Most of what the show does, even the parts that like teeter on the line of canon breaking, it doesn't really break canon. Okay? Because by definition, breaking canon means that something that already exists in the universe now no longer exists or no longer makes sense in the context that something now that has now been released, right? So, for example, something that is canon breaking to haters is Anakin Skywalker's birth. We know that in canon, Anakin is conceived by the Force. He doesn't have a father. We know that in canon, Plagueis and Palpatine don't create Anakin, but rather Anakin is the response of Plagueis and Palpatine messing with the midichlorians. So they mess with the midichlorians, trying to create life. The Force says, no, I'm going to create the chosen one, Anakin Skywalker, in response to the Sith trying to alter the Force. The canon-breaking moment is that the witches in The Acolyte create Osha and May of the Force, and now that makes Anakin Skywalker's character make no sense. No. It doesn't break canon because Osha and May being conceived of the Force doesn't actually change Anakin's conception. Okay? So, at least in my opinion, what the Acolyte does in these canon-breaking moments, such as the conception of Osha and May, Yoda being at the end of the show, Ki-Adi-Mundi being somewhat aware of what's going on, what this does is it draws into question the stuff that has existed before. So Ki-Adi-Mundi being in the show doesn't break the canon moment that Ki-Adi-Mundi says the Sith have been extinct for millennia. But what this does is it draws that into question. How could Ki-Adi-Mundi say the Sith have been extinct for a millennia when he's in the Acolyte actively in a position where it doesn't really make sense how these Jedi are dying and it's not a Force wielder, right? Same thing goes for Yoda at the end of the show. You're telling me that Vernestra, who's, shady and she's covering up this big lie, you're telling me Yoda can't sense something's fishy when we see him sense everything in the prequel trilogy. It's those kind of moments. And what it feels like to me is the creator, Leslie Headland, wanted to put her stamp on Star Wars and interpret things the way she wants to. And the problem I have with that isn't the fact that she wants to interpret things a different way that maybe I do or maybe, some other people do. It's the fact that now this portion of Star Wars that she created directly conflicts with the stuff that has existed before. And I fundamentally have a problem with that. I think that when you're creating a new Star Wars project, the number one thing that it should do before it even begins script writing is understand that everything that has come before, specifically George Lucas's material, needs to be first and foremost the most important portion of what you're creating. And I don't think the Acolyte cares for that. I think the Acolyte does something definitely interesting. It does something different, and I just don't think it does it well. I don't like the Acolyte. I'm glad it was canceled. I will say a highlight, though, is The Stranger. Love him. He was super cool. I'd love to see more of him. Maybe a Tales of the Acolyte show where we get a Kimar arc. I don't know. Just saying, I'd watch that. But I definitely don't want to see any more of Osha or May or Vernestra or any of those characters. I could care less. So that's where the Acolyte is for me. Okay, just a few more left. Skeleton Crew. Super fun. I'm going to make this quick. Skeleton Crew for me falls in the B tier right after Tales of the Jedi. Such a fun and cute story, completely separated from everything else that is going on. So fun. I totally enjoyed watching every second of this show. After that, we have the final Tales series, Tales of the Underworld. I'm going to make this one quick as well. I think Tales of the Underworld is the best of the three Tales series, but I'm going to put it just in front of Tales of the Jedi, behind Episode 1. Cad Bane, Asajj Ventress, awesome stories. And the last project I need to rank, Andor. Where does Andor go? Andor is one of three S-tier Star Wars projects, falling behind Episodes 3 and 5. Everything Andor does is great. From top to bottom, Season 1 through 2, perfection. That is what writing is. That is what true storytelling is. That is what having a plan when creating a project is. Tony Gilroy smashed it out of the park. I absolutely love Andor. Anybody who says otherwise is wrong. Specifically, Episodes 7, 8, and 9 in Season 2. Episodes 7, 8, and 9 are the best trilogy in Star Wars for the Andor show. Love it. Absolutely adore Andor. What it did is something that we may never see in Star Wars or in TV again. Perfection.